December 18th, 2024, the year of new beginnings. And welcome to our restoration series. This is actually probably all of them: recovery, renewal, and resilience. It really just depends on which stage you are in this understanding. But today, I'm bringing you a teaching on knowing your worth. In fact, this is probably 2 in 1 that I'm going to do. That is to say, this is part 1, and I'm going to do a second one because identity and worth go hand in hand. But today's I'm doing worth first because this is what I felt in my spirit to teach on first. Those of you that have been rocking with me for a while know that worth is something I teach on a lot. And in fact, I think I'm going to link my blog on this video so you guys can check out some writings that I've done over the years and some teachings that I've done through writing on this specific subject. But know your worth. Do you know your worth? What do you think of self when it comes to your worth? Worth is a foundational part of self. And the first layer of this foundation is actually identity, which is going to be the second teaching that I'm going to do. But I'm going to get into this for a little bit, and I'm going to show you where this comes from. Where does our worth come from? If you were to sit and think about yourself, where do you think your worth comes from? I'm literally going to give you like 2 minutes to think about this. Where does your worth come from? Because it does come from somewhere. But you might be surprised to know the source. Our worth is inherent. Welcome everyone in the chat. Good to see y'all. Hope you're doing well. Our worth is inherent. It is God-given. It is given to us before we were even born, and it will never leave us. Okay? So this is important to understand, again, because we tend to look to others, and there's a connection to this, and I'm going to get into this in a second. We tend to look to others to edify us in our self-worth. Okay? This is actually part of the human frame. This is part of being, and especially, I'll probably get into this a little more in the second video when we talk about identity. But our sense of worth and our sense of self-awareness and our sense of identity comes from, in this earthly realm that we're in, it actually does come from our parents or our guardians, those who raised us. So if you wrestle with self-worth or a good, healthy understanding of who you are, then this is where we need to look. But at the root, we cannot earn our worth. And this is going to change your life if you do not have a concept of this at all. Your worth cannot be earned, and you do not need to prove your worth to anybody, because at its roots, it is spiritually inherent and inherited by God Himself. So this is going to set some of you free, because a lot of us, because of the message that we received growing up, whether it was parents or guardians, relatives, whoever it was that you looked up to understand who you are, may not have taught you this. Okay? Many of us actually grew up being told very negative things about who we are. And this is why we have issues with self-worth. We have issues with self awareness. We have issues with self-actualization and certainly self-mastery. So I'm here to empower you to know truth at its very roots, spiritually speaking, because you are spirit. Remember this: spirit, soul, and body. Your worth is God-given. Therefore, no one can take it away, and no one can give it to you. It comes directly from Him. So that's how I'm going to start this teaching. Very good. Good to see everybody. Thank you for asking. Hope everyone's doing well. Please feel free to ask any questions, and I will come back and answer them. So there's two foundations of self, okay? The first is identity, and this is the teaching I'm going to teach second. I'm doing it kind of backwards in a sense, but identity is bestowed upon us through our earthly fathers, okay? Now, again, our true healed and whole identity comes from God Himself. Again, this is where we understand that God created us whole, but because we're born into brokenness, we're born into broken humanity, we sort of have to get back to those roots, which is why restoration is important to understand, that we have restoration. We just need to learn to walk it out. However, when we're born, we are born into broken environment and broken people, okay? None of us are perfect. None of us have it all figured out. However, the more you know about yourself, the more you know about your roots, the more you know about your generational lineage and bondage, the things that your parents struggled with, the things that their parents struggled with, because a lot of it is passed down generation to generation. So the more you know about it, the more empowered you become to break those toxic cycles in your family. And this is why this is so important, to understand the roots of all of this. So identity, and I'm just going to gloss over this because this is a whole different teaching altogether. But for the sake of understanding, I have to share it now to understand worth. Identity is bestowed on us by our earthly fathers. So the relationship you have or had, because some of us, our fathers are either not in our life anymore or they're no longer here. But the relationship that you have or had with your earthly father shaped your identity. And the reason is because identity is in essence the seal that our fathers give us by name. This is why we take our father's last name. So there is an order to this. Much of it is just the order, God's order of things. And obviously a lot of it is obviously how we have been raised and to understand. So this seal of ownership, if you will, symbolizes the authority, hopefully the protection, because again, you know, fathers have inherently been given protection over their family. This is, now again, this is the ideal, what God would have hoped for us. Now, this is not always the case. Some of us have not had protection from our earthly fathers. And if that's you, I'm sorry that you've gone through that, because again, this is where we understand that, you know, our families have their issues, and the more we know about it, the more we can heal and recover. But they have bestowed identity by the seals. As soon as I said that. As soon as I said that. Interesting. Okay, so I'm back. Wow. Y'all, so when I see these kind of like interruptions and stuff, especially when I'm sharing something that's literally going to break off generational bondage and curse in your life, I'm not surprised. And it's not going to stop me from continuing with the message. So glory to God. Let's go. So fathers bestow identity. Again, their name, again, think about this. You carry your father's name. For women, of course, when you get married, and this is a whole other teaching, but when you get married, you exchange your father's name for your husband's name. And this is a mantle switch. This is this understanding that you are now under the covering of your husband, who is going to bestow his leadership and his protection over you. And this is a whole other teaching and powerful understanding. However, for men, however, again, you carry your father's name and you take your father's name into your family, if that makes sense. So if you struggle with identity, chances are there is some kind of disconnect within your relationship with your earthly father, whichever end that was from, whether it was from you to him or him to you, or however it is. So when we get into this understanding that some of the issues that we struggle with when it comes to ourself come from the relationships that we have with father and mother. Now our mothers, let me get into this for a second. Our mothers bestow self-worth and self-image. Again, this is this understanding that mothers were created. Now again, this is, God's vision for family. This is not necessarily how we experienced it, which is why if we didn't experience it as close to this as we could have, this is why our brokenness is what it is. And it came from our upbringing. So mothers were created to nurture. Fathers were created to protect. Fathers were created to provide. Okay? Mothers were created to nurture and to cultivate. So if you didn't receive that growing up, or you didn't receive that in your later years, whatever it is, and wherever your relationship is with your earthly parents or your guardians, because a lot of us were adopted, a lot of us grew up with grandparents or aunts and uncles, whatever it is for you. If you did not receive, the nurture that you needed, the bond that babies and children need with their mothers, or their guardians, that esteemed you, that made you feel safe, that made you feel like no matter what you're going through, they're there for you. This is why we wrestle with issues with self-esteem, issues with self-worth, issues with self-actualization, and issues with self-mastery. Okay? In the same way, when it comes to our fathers, our earthly fathers, or those that were in the position of authority over us that we look to as a father, if they did not provide protection, if they did not provide a safe space for you to be yourself, this is why we wrestle with the brokenness that we wrestle with. So, and I'm going to get into this more in the second video when I talk about identity and the roots of that. But no matter what your story is, and not to say your story is irrelevant, because it's very important to know your story. Some of us did grow up in, violent homes. Some of us saw awful things growing up in our house. Some of us grew up with, all kinds of things that we shouldn't have seen when we were little kids that made us wonder and question about who we are. So all of this is important to assess for yourself. And this is your space to do that. Whether you're watching this on the replay or you're watching this now, ask yourself these questions. How did I see myself when I looked at my mother? How did she reflect back to me who I was? Whatever stage of life that was, whether you were a little girl or little boy, in your adolescence, in your teen years, or as an adult. Where is your relationship now? And even if your parents are no longer here or you are estranged from them, you can still find healing by taking some time to ask yourself, what was the relationship I had with my mom, with my dad, with my aunt, with my uncle, whoever it was that raised you. And what did they teach me about who I was? Did I feel safe with them? Did I feel like I could be myself? Did I feel like I had to hide who I was because they wouldn't accept me, or they wouldn't show me affection, or they wouldn't show me love? Do I feel like, was I scared of them because they were always angry and upset at me? Was I always worried about disappointing them? All of these things have added up to how I see myself now and how I carry myself with myself and with others. Because remember, the areas that were unhealed within self are still crying out for help, and they're still crying out for healing. So it's really important to assess this for yourself. Do you know your worth? Because your worth, even if you didn't have that message that you were unconditionally loved, which is the love that God has for us, our Heavenly Father, however you see Him, His love is not conditional. It's not based on your performance. It's not based on how good you do at school. It's not based on, how successful you are in your career. It's not based on how much money you make. No, none of that matters, because at the core, you were made in His image, and He accepts you just as you are, even in all of your struggles and brokenness. Which is why it's important to know this foundation of worth comes from my spiritual father, who, yes, even though I'm a sinner, even though I don't always get it right, even though I make mistakes, even though I'm still learning, He never turns His back on me. He loves me unconditionally, and He loves you unconditionally. So my hope today is that you get this message that your worth is inherent, and it never changes in spite of you. It is always, 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 always the same. And if you didn't receive that message growing up, my heart goes out to you, and I understand as well. But also remember this. We are broken people living in a broken world, and our parents only poured into us what they learned, and to the degree that they've been healed. And I'll tell you something, when I got that revelation for myself, it gave me a lot of freedom to make peace with my parents, and to make peace with the fact that they did the best they could with what they had. But the more empowered you are, the more knowledgeable you are, the more you can carry forward to your children, or to those around you. So any questions? I'm just going to go back real quick. Any questions? Y'all, I'm sorry. I still don't have... I need to figure out how to do this, but I think I can translate some of y'all's messages. I'll look into that. I don't know how to do it right now, but yeah. Let's see. So some of this that I was getting into, it really comes from this teaching of, and I'm going to link it in the description, the father and mother wound, which we all have. Okay. Again, God created us to be loved. God created us to be loved unconditionally, actually, which is why understanding that He's the only one who can do it is so important, because He's perfect. And our parents are not perfect. We're not perfect. So we get glimpses of this revelation. And, we learn from them, and we carry, hopefully, carry the healing into the next generation. even if you don't have children, you know, the love that you understand for self. And I have a teaching on, actually I did a love series, I think 2 years ago. But I have a teaching on that where I teach you on loving, understanding God's love for you so you can learn to love self, and then understanding how to love others once you understand how to love self. And this is the true love. This is the, you know, God love that is perfect. And yeah, it's amazing to know like that love so that I can therefore have grace when that love is not met in my earthly relationships. Very empowering, very important to understand. But yeah, so I'm going to ask you again, do you know that you are worth everything? You are worth everything to God. In fact, He demonstrated that by His sacrifice for us. He gave us everything. So if you are struggling with self-worth, self-image, if you're not feeling very good about yourself, or you've been in a season of depression, a season of not feeling that anybody cares about you, or feeling alone, maybe you are estranged from your family, maybe you're, you know, have some relationships where you're not connected, just know that you are worth everything. And that is what the Lord says about us. So yeah, short teaching today, but I will come back with part 2 on identity. And in that teaching, I'm going to get into the mother wound and the father wound to understand, because it is important for us to understand, not only to understand it, but assimilate it into our life. Because we do carry generational lineage, good and bad, into our life and pass it down. And the hope is, again, to learn from the past, to learn from the areas in our family life that are not healthy for us. You know, maybe they didn't have the revelation of these certain areas that are actually just continue to pass down generation to generation. But when you get the revelation and you're the cycle breaker in your family, which a lot of you are that are on my channel, because I'm a princess of perseverance, and I'm teaching you to cut off those bondages, okay? A lot of you are cycle breakers in your family. That is to say that with you, it stops, okay? Whatever it is for you, family violence, addiction, I mean, whatever the list is for you, it stops with you, because you're the one who's having the revelation, the understanding, and the empowerment, and the faith to see it through, so you don't carry it into the next generation, which is very important. And that's how we heal our family. You know, that's how we heal our family, is becoming healed yourself to carry it forward. Okay, so I hope y'all are doing well, and I will see y'all back here probably Friday for our last day's live stream. Yeah, I'm going to save the teaching on identity for next week. And this is actually, I'm going to release this on Tuesday. I was supposed to come on here yesterday, but it was a very long day. So this is actually Tuesday's teaching. But yeah, I'll come back next week with identity for our recovery series. I hope you're doing well, and feel free to share anything in the comments, because remember, everybody that shares empowers the readers and the listeners, and we all need that. So talk to y'all soon. Have a great day. Bye.